Welcome to Breaking Down Patriarchy. I'm Amy McPhie Allebest. When I think of women's courage and resilience in the face of violent patriarchy, the image that comes to my mind is the woman life freedom movement that took Iran by storm starting in September 2022. People around the world watched in awe as Iranian women and their allies risked their lives as they spoke out against their patriarchal government. In the years since, I've often wondered how the situation in Iran has developed and how women are continuing to speak out. So I was thrilled to hear from my friend Sagi Sagazadeh, who is a member of a group called I Win, or Iranian Women in Network, whose mission is empowering women through art. She's also a member of I Will, which is a group that helps women share their stories. As they say at I Will, when a woman speaks, silence turns into resistance. I met with Saki and some of her colleagues to hear about their incredibly inspiring ongoing work. Please enjoy our conversation. Welcome, everyone. I'm so excited and honored to have you on Breaking Down Patriarchy today. And I wonder if we can start off the episode by having you each introduce yourselves by telling listeners who you are, your name, where you're from, and a little bit about the work you do and what's brought you to do the work that you're doing today.
Okay, I guess I'm gonna start. My name is Sari Saqozadeh. I was born and raised in Tehran, Iran. I was born during the war of Iran-Iraq, and I was raised in a middle upper class family in Iran. So I think I had a lot of privileges that a lot of people same age as me did not have, probably. I studied at one of the pretty well-known universities in Iran, Tehran Polytechnic, and then I went to Europe to study for my master's and PhD in biotechnology and material sciences, and then I came to the United States to for a job. And I lived for a few years in Boston, and now I live in Minnesota. And I think, in sense of activism, I have been trying to do my best when it comes to women's rights, children's rights, and also I have been spending some resources for animal rights. It is very close to my heart, and a lot of different instances that happens across the world I can relate because I have either seen stuff or heard stories of similar situations that inflict pain on people. So a lot of times when I see some harm being done to specific people, it feels very close. It ignites some trauma, and I try to use whatever privilege I have to help to improve and also for myself to learn. That is me. Nassim, do you want to go?
Sure. Uh, you actually inspired me to add a few things that I didn't plan to. But so yes, my name is Nassim. I'm honored to be here. I'm truly grateful for you to give us this opportunity. I'm a 46-year-old Iranian woman. I was born in 1979, just a few months after the Islamic Revolution happened in Iran. And I'm here in Seattle, Washington. I'm a physician, a cardiologist, and I'm also a mom and a cat grandma. Uh, I never considered myself an activist, although looking back, you know, living in those countries, you've been an activist all your life and you just didn't know it at all. I was um, inspired really and started my activism after the Women Life Freedom Uprising in September of 2022. And it was an awakening moment for me, just like for many of us, seeing our young children on the street. And that was the time that, as Sami said, we felt like we need to use our privileges here to try to amplify their voices. And since then, I have been dedicating a great portion of my time to speaking up against a lot of those atrocities happening both in Iran and in other countries. I started working with Ukrainian activists, for example, and learned a lot basically through this process. So that's a short version, and I'll pass it on to Kelly.
Hello, my name's Kelly O'Leary. I'm also very excited to be here. Amy, I haven't mentioned yet, but I've been a fan of the podcast for a couple years. I'm a listener. And so when Sagi said, "Oh yeah, Amy, she has this podcast," I was like, "Wait, what?" So I was very excited to be on. I grew up in Montana, where I learned to appreciate wild places. I love nature. I studied zoology, in college, and I minored in religious studies, which was a lot of fun and confused everyone in my classes. My science friends didn't know why I studied religion. My religion friends didn't know why I studied science, but it was a great combo in my eyes. After I graduated from high school, I worked as a dog trainer in an animal shelter. Dog training is a big passion of mine. Animal behavior is a big passion of mine. But I ended up going back to school and got a teaching credential, and I taught high school science for 6 years, biology, chemistry, and environmental science. My first year teaching was 2017. So you can imagine the beginning of a very interesting political era in the United States. And so that was interesting to be teaching science during that time period. During the pandemic, I started making audio and video lessons for my students and developed a love of audio production and editing. And my husband and I, we were both teachers, and we both left teaching to create an audio storytelling and podcasting business. And so that's what I'm doing right now. I live outside Seattle, across the Sound in a small town. It's easy to get into the city. And that's how I ended up getting involved with I Will. I met Nassim just on the street. I think we'll talk about this more later, but yeah, we bumped into each other during a protest in 2022, and ever since then, I've been involved in this fight. And with activism, I've been an environmental activist for a long time, and so bringing that passion to this fight as well.
My name is Reina. I've been an activist for about 15 years plus. I've been in Canada for about 22 years. I came to Canada through my ex-husband, who was Canadian, but Iranian Canadian. And my marriage was an arranged marriage. I came to Canada, and after 4 years, I had to kind of run from him because I suffered from a lot of domestic violence through him. And eventually, he decided to wanted to end my life. Then that's how I got involved with the victim services and got out of that abusive relationship. And then I moved to Toronto from then. And since I moved to Canada, I've noticed that a lot of Indigenous women and girls are going missing. I was very close to the house of Picton, who actually, it was happening at the time I came here. If you know anything about Picton, Picton used to pick up women in Vancouver from an area and eventually kill them. So that's how I got involved with the Indigenous people. I met a lot of Indigenous families there. So I got involved, and I was helping out with just talking about Indigenous women and missing women and murdered Indigenous people. So I got involved. I did a lot of volunteering with them. And then after I got separated from my ex-husband, I helped within the shelter for domestic violence, women that have been through domestic violence. So I volunteered there a lot. As I moved around, I was able to help with the youth. And I had a son at that time. So my son was growing up, and I wanted to teach him how to be a good man and how to respect women. So we started volunteering together at the age of, like, he was about 7, 8 years old, in the youth centers, just to see how the world is happening, what's going on around us. So eventually we moved to Toronto, and since then I've been an advocate for LGBTQIA people as well. So I've been advocating for them, as well as any visible minorities as well. So I do take courses to study about all these different situations, how to assist people, how to be more advocate for them, how to advocate for them correctly. So I've been studying, I've been taking courses. After I got divorced, I moved to Toronto. I went to study hotel management. So I worked in hotels as a manager for many years. Through Western, I do take courses just to bring my knowledge high in terms of like what's happening in the world and learning about everything that is happening. In 2022, when Masa Jina Amini happened, I've always been behind the scenes. So when saw that so many people are misinforming the world about how Iranian are and what's happening, I decided to actually open the camera and start making videos. I started within TikTok, and after a few, like I would say about a year and a half, I grew my TikTok to 10,000 followers just to talk about like what's happening and just making sure that the news of what's happening in Iran is getting out. And then after that, I moved to Instagram, and I've been advocating that way. So my focus the last 2.5, 3 years has been mostly on my Iranian people, and I've been advocating for them. In Twitter, that's when I met Nasim Jan, and she's been helping with Elham Modarisi, who was a political prisoner in Iran who actually had a liver failure through the being in prison. So that's how me and Nasim got talking, and we started advocating and getting her a hospital here in Canada, where I work close to my university. And we're able to I was able to, with the help of other people here in Canada, we were able to bring her to Canada, her and her mom. And recently just we brought her sister as well. So that's basically about me. Sorry about rush a little bit. I have a son at home.
That's great. Thank you so much. Really quickly before I forget, Reina, are you okay with your video being shown on Instagram? And okay, you are okay with that. Great. Perfect. Well, thank you. Thanks everyone for those introductions. I'm so inspired already by your stories. And I'm really excited to get into more of the work that I Will does. But before that, I wonder if we can start because the reason that we're even having this conversation today is because I met Sagi a couple of years ago. She's been on the podcast already, and I wanted to follow up kind of since we left off in that conversation with Sagi. When we talked, the women life freedom movement in Iran was just beginning. It was beginning to gain momentum. And I've wondered many times as that story has kind of fallen out of the news and other things have, hit the headlines more in recent years, I've wondered what's been happening in Iran. So, could someone maybe just bring listeners up to speed about what's been happening in Iran between then and now?
Yeah, a lot. A lot has happened, and it's very multifaceted, and a lot of progress has happened in different areas, and also a lot of dark points have been now being exposed, and the whole Iranian community, both inside the country and outside, they had to reckon with a lot of thoughts and beliefs, and also the way that we approach in our lives. I'm just gonna uh, give a short idea about how I was raised, and then I'm going to tell you about a lot of stuff that has happened. So, something that went on a lot of times in my family was have a small, secure space for yourself, stay there, and do not go further because you are going to be powerless, and there are powers bigger than you, and there isn't anything that you can do. So it was a very much learned helplessness that was introduced to me very rightfully because we did not live in a la la land. And I think my parents really wanted me to be safe more than anything else. And I think something that a lot of people around me who or people who had the same kind of privileges or had the same like path in life we had was okay, my corner is safe, and the most I can do is to just read the news and give a thumbs up or like or share, and that is the max I'm going to do because further than that it's dangerous. I think that is something that has been like significantly shattered, I would say. But as of stuff that has happened inside Iran, so many changes has happened, and it's massive. immense, and it's really to the credit of the Iranian women, men, girls, boys, elderly, young. So much has changed, and it's really thanks to their bravery and also their willingness to move past the regime that exists and go towards a better future. So Iranian women now do daily civil disobedience. Like they would not wear hijab, and it's not like it is safe. And so there are pictures that might come out of Iran that people have their scars around their necks, or it is in their bag, or maybe they don't have it. It might look like, oh, they're free. That is not the case. At any time, you can get arrested. And actually, people do get arrested for that. For example, and also people are more vocal about cases when they get arrested. So, for example, there is this girl, her name is Roya Heshmati, and she was flogged. She received lashes for not wearing hijab. And actually, she wrote the description of the day that she had to go to the court to receive the lashes. And actually, she decided to not wear hijab, going to the Islamic Republic court. And obviously, over there, she was constantly asked, demanded, forced to wear hijab. And her point of view was, I'm here to receive lashes. I'm not going to wear this. Ultimately, she was handcuffed behind her back and they put something on her head. But now that these stories are being told, people feel braver and also more emboldened to follow through the daily civil disobedience. There is a lot of more singing performed by Iranian women. So after the revolution, women were not allowed to sing, and you would not hear a solo woman. So they can sing in a choir, in a group, but you would not hear anyone solo. And there is this girl, her name is Parastu Ahmadi, and she did a wonderful performance, recorded it, put it on YouTube. Again, YouTube is banned in Iran, and she called it an imaginary concert. And she explained it as, I would like to imagine a better life. And after the woman life freedom, I'm wondering how that imaginary life would be. And well, let's call this an imaginary concert. And she performed some beloved songs of the Iranian culture, and a lot of people watched it. And obviously, she was arrested afterwards, and her court proceedings went. There are a lot of like street singers. There's another girl, her name is Zara Ismaili, and she was arrested as well. She started singing in metro station, and I feel like her voice sometimes is very much like the unfortunately passed away Iranian singer Hayede. So girls are running the whole thing. Also, girls in sports, they do participate in international events, and they're not wearing hijab. So, for example, we have Elnaz Rekabi in rock climbing. We had Sara Khadem Sharieh in chess, and also Nilufar Mardani in skating. And either when they are doing sport, or also when they are receiving the award, they're not wearing hijab, and then they will face the consequences. It's not like, oh, I'm gonna dodge it, but they are willing to look at the face of the regime and say, I'm gonna do what I want. And kudos to them. I mean, I don't know if I was that brave. I wish I was. I wish I can be. But for me, it is really inspiring. Um, Now, the regime has really escalated the the aggression. So we have the highest number of executions per capita. I think China has the highest count, but Iran has the highest per capita. And just in the first 4 months of 2025, so until by the end of April, there has been 343 executions. And this is like 75% increase compared to 2024, which was 195 people in 4 months. And just in the month of May, 113 people were executed in the first 25 days of May. It is insane. And I just looked at the numbers at Amnesty International. Like in 2021, we had 576 people, 2022, 582 people, in 2023, 853 people. And it just, so since 2022, which was the woman life freedom movement, since the killing of Mahsa Amini at the hand of the Iranian police, like the numbers have skyrocketed. And the regime has been pretty bold in executing people who have been participating in the protests. So there are different different activists or beloved people who just voice their opinion, and then you would see how they are jailed and what kind of sham of a trial is performed, and then they do get executed, and it really breaks the hearts of Iranian people. I think the regime is doing absolutely anything they can to like reaffirm that kind of learned helplessness, I believe. And because of a lot of these kind of atrocities that happened, there was a United Nations independent international fact-finding mission, and that started in September 2022. And ultimately, they reaffirmed that the Iranian government has committed gross human rights violations, and many of which amount to crimes against humanity during and after the protests. And that includes like torture, rape, killings, shooting people in the eyes. If you search, you'll see a lot of Iranian activists who have lost one eye. Actually, that's one of the methods that the regime will not only oppresses you, hurts you very significantly for the rest of your life, but also you are identifiable now. It's not a beating or a bruise underneath. You are very visible, a walking testament of what has happened. And they have no shame. They have absolutely no problem in hurting people. And so the international community and organizations and associations have talked about it, but it hasn't gone further than that. Another thing that the regime has been doing to silence people is to put pressure on the family members of the victims. So they would execute someone and they would not give the body back. And it is maddening because culturally and also due to our religion, etc., there are stories of imams or like whatever figure that did not have the body of their deceased in whatever war. And this is exactly what they are doing. And people are really fed up. Like people really see the amount of hypocrisy and the kind of sham that the regime has been displaying. Like the regime would very much televise the courts or also the how prisoners have been forced to testify. So you would see that. And now people very much know that this is given under pressure. The court hearing is 15 minutes. And at the end of it, they give the death sentence. But like they do not have representation. They do not have they don't have an attorney present. So it is getting very visible. At the same time, the regime is very bold because they have this belief of if we take one step back, then people know that they can push. So I would say kind of USSR Stalin time, but religious and firm. So it's going to resist until the time that it falls into shambles. But now the families of the victims have became the pillars of resistance. So they are banding together. They are now creating groups that not only raise awareness, but are kind of active and pretty dynamic. So they stand against the oppression and historical distortion, actually. And despite the threats, the arrests, imprisonment, exile, and the relentless pressure, these families have become the voice of truth, and they keep the light on, they keep talking about their loved ones, and actually that has been our North Star in a way, like the father of Ahmad Ali Karimi, like Mashallah Karimi, the family of Farzad Moazzami, etc. They're very inspiring. Seeing again how brave they are and how strongly they stand together. And due to a high number of death penalties, there is this new movement of saying no to the death penalty initiated by the people who are and were in prison. So I think it's also almost been 82 weeks. It started in 2024. They started going on hunger strikes every Tuesday. And the idea is to keep focus on say no to executions or Tuesdays of no to execution. And this has gained some attention by people across the world, etc. So that has been another something that initiated by the Iranians who are inside the country and has got some momentum and track. Another thing that has started, though outside of Iran, is the campaign for ending the gender apartheid. So the campaign is titled End Gender Apartheid. And the whole idea is started by Iranian Afghan activists. The goal is for the United Nations to recognize gender apartheid as a crime, and they want different countries to codify it. And that would make such an impact in a lot of countries. And actually that's why there was a hearing about it, and there are some countries that are firmly against it, because once you codify this, then you have to look at yourself and see what you are doing to your women. I would say the woman life freedom movement revolution in 2022 resulted in a lot of Iranians outside of Iran to have a look at ourselves and kind of reckon and being awakened that, hey, we haven't been active for a very long time. We lack organizations. We lack grassroots organizations that we can come together and go talk to a Congress member, talk to a Senate member, talk to the mayor, etc. So it was a moment of reckoning, and a lot of different small groups started happening, forming, taking place. I think a lot of Iranians know how to now form an NGO and how to fight for it. And I think something that we can see from the Iranians outside is different groups now being active. And I think Nassim can tell you about how she took on that and how she went forward with it.
Thank you for all of that. That's so fascinating and really heartening and inspiring. I have a question for you, but I think I'm going to ask it now and then have people answer it at the end, because we always end episodes this season with kind of a call to action for listeners. One thing that came up for me as you were talking, Sagi, is I was wondering if there's anything that the international community, the non-Iranian international community, has done to help, and what can still be done to support Iranian women. And specifically, I was wondering if international pressure does make a difference. And you talked about that a little bit with the End Gender Apartheid International campaign, that maybe the government can be almost shamed enough, and like if enough countries shine a light on that, that maybe that makes a difference. So maybe if everyone can think about that for a second, we'll put a pin in it for now, but talk about it at the end, so that listeners who don't have necessarily a tie to Iran but want to support can know how to do that. In the meantime, we'll move on to our next question, and that is to broaden and talk about the work of I Will. So that's, for listeners, it's the words I Will, I-WILL. I'm wondering who started this organization. What is this organization, and what is its purpose?
That's Nassim. Go ahead, Nassim.
Thank you, Sagi. Thanks, Amy, for asking that question. Yes, this is Nassim. I can go on and tell you about the inspiration about the I will, but let me take you back to how the idea started, because since then it really evolved. So definitely the idea was started within few days of the protest happening outside Iran, as there were hundreds of people, in some cities, thousands of people chanting, some in Farsi, some in English. If they were in Europe, their local languages. In my own city, as I was just watching our crowd, passionate, crying, just putting their heart and soul into those slogans and, yeah, shouting to say what is happening. I would also observe people going around the protest, looking with a question mark, trying to figure out what is this about. And even when people were chanting in English, they still couldn't understand what is this about exactly, what is the background, or. So I felt like there is a lot of energy there, but there's a big disconnect. And imagine September 2022, it was the time of also US midterm elections, which was a very sensitive election time. Sometimes, as we were saying, US do something, or then people thought, okay, this is a rally for one of the parties. And I remember one time this sweet, sweet old gentleman came and said, is this about abortion rights? Because everything was women, right? I'm like, oh, this is so wrong. We need to do better than that. So part of it was that trying to, as Sally mentioned earlier, to bridge the gap between the American activists, the American grassroots activism, and also like people who hold office to tell about our concern here, um, because it felt like myself. I thought about myself that, oh well, you're a woman, you're a progressive woman. I have a son. Every time he goes to school, if there is a phone call, I'm worried about a school shooting happening. As I looked at the administration, I'm worried also as a physician and as a woman about the women's right and abortion laws. And now this whole massive thing is happening in my home country that I literally can't sleep at night. Some nights you spend crying, you wake up, you go to work, you share all those first things that I told you about the social injustice here where we live, plus another layer of what is happening inside your home country. And it felt like, and people didn't know, like our colleagues, as compassionate, our friends, neighbors, they were, but they just didn't know what was happening inside, that there was so much else going on. So part of it was bridging those gaps. Part of it was our very difficult reckoning that we realized a lot of the information being put out there are put out what we call a lot of whitewashing and a lot of propaganda going on in the news. Again, by people who had all the good intention counting on these pundits to come because of the relation they had built over time. But although it was impossible for them to literally support the regime, nobody could say, the regime is doing something good. There were pictures out there, but they would minimize it and they would just kind of navigate their ways through it to just either make it just about a, hair cover, all sort of things in order to make them less evil. And that was also another thing that was tearing us apart, that we don't have a voice. What if people who have um, no gain can talk? People, regular people who survived, people who are just have families back there. Your teacher could talk about it, who is just an Iranian woman and doesn't get paid to go on any program. So that was another concept, to try to tell the stories without any type of any trying to be politically correct or trying to just censor anything or change the narratives, hearing firsthand the stories, especially in the era of social media and a lot of platforms that you can use, because a lot of great people were asking, where can we get the information from? And I learned it also through activism with other groups, like Ukrainian groups I mentioned earlier, that this propaganda is a huge tool for the authoritarian governments. I thought it's only our government, but then they told me how they a lot of their fight is against Putin narrative of changing historical facts, justifying the crime they're doing there, or speaking on behalf of some Ukrainians saying, we rather end the war even if we lose our land and things like that. So the apologies apparently are everywhere, and there's a lot that those governments actually spend on changing the minds of the people living in liberal democracies. So it was really important for us. And then the more we learned from the stories, the more it felt like, okay, there has to be a focus also that we are as immigrants, and immigrants make about 15% of US population. So, I just looked up those numbers and I was also blown away to just confirm that about 15% of the people here were born outside the United States. So they have another home country to worry about. It could be an Afghan woman. It could be that Ukrainian woman who was crying one day because the night before they bombed a hospital, a children's hospital. And, they are among us. And again, going back to having that second layer of complexities, and because of what happens, whether it's human rights violation or because of the war happening in their home country, they're suffering. And lastly, by nature, immigrant women they shy away from talking. Whether part of it is language barrier, they don't feel comfortable. Part of it is the long-standing, historical oppression, not trusting the system, not trusting the government. Um, there are multiple barriers. They fear for families back home. They feel uncomfortable. They might be very much tangled in trying to just get settled in the new, country rather than, having uh, being more involved in grassroots activism. So going back to, you know, um, how I was born, basically those ideas, feeling like you're part of this community, you're contributing, and you feel unheard, you feel unseen, and uh, and there are great people out there who, once they see and hear, they can help out, even if it's offering a sympathy versus taking actual actions in national or even international levels. So it has been a journey, and the idea evolved also, and actually our activism continues to evolve as well.
Thanks so much for that. I'm really struck on the power of art and storytelling as activism and as a way for people to maybe process their feelings and heal. So I wonder if you can speak a little bit more about art and storytelling as the focus of I Will, and maybe even share some of the specific stories of women who've been involved.
Absolutely. Okay, so here's Nassim talking again. Um, art was an inseparable part of the woman life freedom from day one. The song Baraye by Shireen Hajipour came out and was released on September 28th, only 12 days after Massa was murdered. And it was viewed by 40 million people within 48 hours. It was very simple. The lyrics were basically exactly the tweets that people were putting out, explaining why they're doing what they're doing, what for kissing on the street, for holding hands, for my sister, for my brother. And that simple, lyric, it became such a worldwide and global phenomenon that actually in February it won the Grammy Award for social change. Um, so the art was part of this movement. It was a huge part of this movement, and artists were arrested on a daily basis in Iran. Sherwin was arrested one day after that song came out. There was Tumash Salehi, who eventually was even sentenced to death and was released after months of um, solitary confinement and massive amount of torture, because art has the beauty of expressing feelings, realities, truth so well that you can read history books, but that feeling that the art gives you and what it inspires in you is bigger than all of that. The another great part of the movement, other than the songs, were photography, so the photos and also the drawings that came out of it. Those absolutely inspiring and courageous pictures of one woman one woman standing in front of all those militia forces who are shielded from head to toe, and just this one woman with one fist standing in front of them, young girls. And then the photos became iconic, and then artists started to draw. Artists' work started to change. People who had been drawing in various forms, they kind of also evolved their work into expressing all those beautiful moments of resistance, of resilience. uh, Books came out that actually put those works together. So it was partly of us watching that and getting inspired. And also when we displayed those, we got a huge feedback of people understanding the reality of what's happening without having to put it into any further words.
In the introduction, I mentioned the story of Vinal that I heard just a couple of weeks ago, which was so powerful. Can you share some of the other women's stories with us that you've maybe met through I Will, who have been sharing their stories with you?
I can share one, and then I think Raina as well. You were going to share some too. The first, this is Kelly, by the way. The first I Will Share session of this year, we spoke to Tara, who I also had the honor of interviewing for a podcast that we did with Nassim as well. Um, and she is Baha'i. And we spoke to a couple other women that were Baha'i as well. And it's a really interesting religious minority in Iran, even though it's probably the largest religious group in Iran after Islam. And it's very much its own standalone religion, beautiful traditions, a long history, but they're being targeted by the Islamic Republic to scapegoat. It's always useful for an authoritarian regime to scapegoat a minority group that's a little bit different. And Tara was just such a wonderful speaker, such a powerful speaker. She's in the United States now, and she experienced so much harassment as a child in school by her classmates and by her teachers, by the administration, telling her that it would be good for the world if they were to kill her. That's the principal of the school telling this to a child, that they're, dirty and wrong. And so that's a story that we've heard multiple times from women in this group. And it is something too that, Tara didn't want to give a lot of her personal information, and we didn't record that session because it's a very retaliatory administration, and they want to scare people, as Sagi was talking about. So it's hard. That's another reason why it's hard to speak up and hard to share art, because you're potentially putting yourself at risk and potentially endangering people that you care about as well. And that's what's so inspiring about this movement, is people saying enough. We're going to do the right thing for everyone and give ourselves that freedom. So that's just a little bit of Tara's story. Yeah. Raina, if you want to share anything else.
I guess I could share Elham's story, how during the Women Life Freedom, um, so Elham has been always against the oppression that's happening in Iran. So she always would go outside during the Women Life Freedom. She started going outside, helping others, as well as just, protesting against all the brutality that has been happening to Iranian people. Through whatever the means they had, they identified her. So they went to her home, they arrested her really brutally. They even like scared her mom. Her mom was really, really scared. So they just confiscated everything in their home, and they just arrested her. After that, they arrested her brother as well. So the situation was so bad that when they took her to the interrogation, to the office, like where to ask a question, they would tell her that because she loves her brother so much, that, oh, we're beating up your brother, and the things that they were saying, the way they were torturing her. So she was in the prison. They took her, they sent her to prison, and they told her that she's going to get the execution because of the way she's been protesting and everything. Through that, they gave her injections. They gave her things that she didn't even know what they are. They wouldn't tell her what it is. So eventually they did so much that she felt sick. And when finally they were able to bail her out after so many, because so many people actually said her name. At that time, there was Elham and a few other women that went on hunger strike. So their name really came out and people were talking about it. So I guess the government got a little bit scared and they just allowed her to be bailed out. And when she was bailed out, and she was so sick that they had to take her to the hospital. So when she went to the hospital, they said, your liver is failing. So it was so bad. So I think just looking at the situations one by one that's happening, there are so many things happening to the women in Iran that the world doesn't realize it. They don't understand what's happening and what's going on. And as soon as these women are so brave to come out and to talk about their situation, I think that's when people, you literally feel the shiver through your spine just to see what's been happening to them. So I think Ilham is just one of them, that thankfully we were able to save her. But I mean, there's so many that unfortunately we're not able to save, right? So they died, like Nico Shakarami, how they took her and they stole her organs, and it was just so bad. Like, everything was so brutal at that time. So I guess Elham is one of them that I would like.
I'm going to deviate from the script just a little bit and just ask, like you say, you're able to save certain women. How do you actually save them?
So we can only save them if they're out of Iran. We can
Right.
only help them if they're out of Iran. So, for example, Elham was able to be smuggled out of Iran and go to Turkey. So that's how we were able to get. There's so many lawyers, so many human rights advocates, for example, in Canada, all around the world, that Iranians that stepped up to help these refugees that go to Turkey to get them out. So many of these refugees were saved throughout years and years. It's not just the Women Life Freedom that this happened. It's been happening for many years, but I guess Women Life Freedom is when it became like huge through the world and people realize it. So saving them, I guess it's not one person. It's like groups of people get together, find ways to lobby the government here in Canada. So we were able to get visa for her by lobbying a lot of like senators and the members of parliament just to say, hey, look at her story. She needs it. Like, for example, Elham's situation was dire. She would have died if we couldn't bring her here. She did get eventually her transplant in Turkey because we were able uh, um, to get some money for her through people of Iran, like people of all over the world, and Iranians and non-Iranians actually helped with her GoFundMe. But when she came here, so we were able to just lobby the government to get her the visa. It's not easy. It's very difficult to lobby the government because they have to look at the situation in terms of, because Iranians are not the only refugees, as we know. So there's so many other situations around the world. So they have to look at it. And it's a matter of like how much you lobby them. So um, there are people in Germany that help people have helped refugees to go to Germany. USA is happening as well. So all around the world, people who were able to smuggle themselves out of Iran and get into Turkey have been helped. So it's not, we can't do that from Iran. It's very, very complicated. It could put them at risk and our families at risk as well.
Mm-hmm. This isn't work necessarily that I Will is doing, right? Like getting people there. My understanding is that I Will is an organization that helps people like share their stories and join online campaigns. But it's when you say we're getting them out, is that I Will or is that other people?
It's not I Will, but I think
Okay.
I Will helps when they move to a safe country. I Will can bring them to share their stories, and
Right.
I Will
Okay.
will make those known to the world.
Yeah. Okay. I just wanted to clarify that which groups were doing what. And I actually want to maybe switch the order of the next two questions, if that's okay. Um, I hope that doesn't confuse anyone, but that was really one thing that was really coming to my mind hearing about these stories. The last two stories was just to ask, I mean, I have my own thoughts about this since I value storytelling so much, but I just wanted to hear your thoughts about how it helps women to be able to share their stories. How does it affect the teller of the story to be able to share? And then how does it affect the listener? What is the purpose for the teller and the listener that has made that like kind of a cornerstone of what you do?
This is Kelly again. One thing that everyone should remember is storytelling is so ancient. The only shared human experience older than storytelling is dancing. So this is really a fundamental part of being a human, and it can connect us so powerfully. The reason that I'm involved in this group is because I listened to and worked with the stories of four women really in depth for a podcast episode that we made in collaboration. This was before Nassim helped or found I Will. We worked together to try and share stories. And it was just, in asking questions, in listening, and then in the process of editing, it became, these stories sank into my blood. And that's what I think it does for listeners is when you hear someone really tell their own experience in their own words, there's nothing more powerful. You can read books, which is very important, but there's nothing like really getting a firsthand account. So from the listener side, it makes the experience so much more rich because I learned these small personal details. What was it like what was the beauty of living in Iran? That's what really hit me the hardest is, the smell of the orange trees, visiting an uncle's woodworking shop, these really powerful personal connections that then people have to flee. They have to flee a place that they love. And that is what I really hope that other people hear from this. And I think that that's often what gets lost when you talk about refugees is it's like, oh, well, good thing they're out now. And you're not thinking about the fact that that place was powerful and beautiful and it was important. It's not like we here live in this shining temple on a hill. No, it's everywhere's the same, and we're lucky that we have freedom and protections at this time. Now, telling the story, we heard this from Vinal. It was really the hardest thing was not being physically with her in person to do these stories. But we know she talked about how just to have everyone be so receptive, just to have people listen is really powerful. And telling your story can help remove the shame from it. That happens so often with victims of violence is you start to feel like this is my fault, like I've done something to deserve this. And by telling your story and having other people listen with respect and honor and love can help expose the honor, the bravery, the creativity, and the intelligence that a person had to display in order to survive this event. So that's why it's so important to us to help them tell these stories because they deserve to have that shame removed. They deserve to be celebrated for what they have done to protect themselves and take care of themselves. And then also to see that they're not alone. And I mean, I think we've all experienced that where we've kept some secret and then didn't want to reveal it. And then once we did, all of a sudden there's a community. And so to see other people who have gone through the same thing, or even to see people who have not gone through the same thing, but show you love and compassion, that helps strengthen community. And that's a really powerful reason why we think storytelling is so important.
Yeah, wonderful.
Also, as she said in her podcast on Kinship Tales, she interviewed us very during the first few weeks after this had happened. So I wanted to just share a little bit of experience as somebody who spoke at that time and how it felt. Um, some of the experiences on the street we had shared. I had been on those streets decades before that. I was beaten up on those streets. I went to jail myself. Nothing major, I mean, compared to what happened really to some of those girls. I mean, one night here and a little bit there and a little bit beaten up. It's a lot of women, unfortunately, have that. But when she started asking me questions and took me through her questions to tell me my story of my childhood, what I loved about my home country, and also then taking me back to what had happened to me over there. And I kind of, as I was talking to him, and that's the art, I guess, um, of Kelly, of you, who bring out these stories, and asked me about those experiences. And I shared things that I even didn't think I would have shared on air. Um, and it felt good. And it also felt like some resistance. And I kind of felt like, okay, I did something. And it's getting back to those monsters. I felt like, okay, I told people how horrible you are. And I also felt somehow brave, although I was out of that, situation. And so it was really impressive. And I thought, okay, well, if I feel like that, and I haven't been through even nearly what, for example, Tara had been or Elham had been, they might feel better after sharing that. And then we got that feedback that it feels like something is lift off your chest. It feels good. And then you hear people supporting you and you realize you are not alone. And it's them who are the monsters, the bad people. They are alone in this world. And you do feel empowered by that.
Hmm. So, other than this storytelling work, which is so important and powerful, what other work does I Will do?
So we have a whole initiative for the upcoming year, and that kind of sums up what we have done and with what we continue to do. Other than sharing the stories, we hold conferences and panel speaking and art exhibitions. So through all of that, we bring this difficult conversation. So the one that we had last year at the anniversary of the Woman Life Freedom, we had panelists who were women who were human rights activists, also joined by an international lawyer on gender apartheid. And our audience were very diverse, local activist groups, mostly non-Iranian, who wanted to learn about what's happening in there. So the conversation that the panelists had, the questions that were asked, Elham's story was shared actually during that event. We had people from we had some support and sponsorship by National Organization of Women. So their representatives were there, the largest feminist organization. And they were also in awe and inspired, and also they learned a lot. It was so good to know even activist people are learning a lot through these panel conversations. They asked excellent questions, and Hom actually was interviewed by their previous chapter president, who wanted to know, like you asked, some of those questions. How can they help? And hearing them firsthand from her was very much different from us, because a lot of times those smear campaigns, those propaganda, they're trying to say, oh, these are, for example, pro-war or anti-progressive, or we have seen how a lot of Iranian activists have been smeared by the regime itself, trying to not to get the voice out. But having them sitting us in the background as organizers and letting these people talk. And then we also had an art exhibition on the side, art created by immigrant women and women. So they were not other people trying to show what is happening, including Ilham herself, who had painted, and other Iranian women who had made it out of the country, and they had, their paintings over there, talking to these. Um, uh, Either that we had representatives from the city council, from multiple city mayor and council and house representatives, sharing their support messages for them. So it was inspiring for our people, and it was also great for them to hear and ask questions. So that's something we are recreating again this year. Our initiative consists of one another event in Washington State and one with the Yazidi community. You heard Vinal's story in Arizona. So panel conversation, art exhibitions. And I wanted to circle back about, we do have an initiative that we have not publicly started or announced yet. It has more work to do. It's probably going to be in another 6 months to maybe a year before we have the bandwidth and foundation for it. But I Will Prosper will be a resource for these women who are within their first 3 years of moving out of the country, and then they need the victims. They need to get back. They need jobs. They need a life. So we will have that starting a funding process just for that reason, because immigrant women um, are also, a lot of them are the victims that, as we talked about earlier, they have lost their eye, they have they are bodily harmed. They may not be able to, work and raise a family here now. And now they are here among us.
Oh, that's wonderful. Well, that leads me to the next question I wanted to ask, which is a follow-up to the question I kind of introduced earlier. And that is what listeners can do to help. And I know, just speaking for myself as an American woman, um, I sometimes hear about, what's going on in Iran or Afghanistan or other places around the world. And I know that sometimes it's hard to not feel hopeless because I don't know what to do to help. And sometimes I'll think I do want to help, but then I'll know, like looking back historically, like sometimes even, well-intentioned efforts actually backfire. They have unintended consequences, or there's white saviorism, and you think like, oh, I don't, it can be kind of paralyzing. And it's important to know like how to direct our efforts when we do want to help, and what will actually be supportive. Um, and so I wonder how you see this issue and what would be the most valuable way. Again, like I said earlier, what would be the most valuable way that people can support women who are not necessarily part of their own home community, but if we want to show solidarity with our sisters throughout the world?
I think this is Kelly. And I think the most important thing is just remaining open for connection and really remaining open for requests. I definitely never expected to be a part of an Iranian women's rights organization. When I was growing up, I knew Iran didn't like America, and that was about the end of what I knew about Iran. And it was a really two-dimensional idea that I had. But I stumbled across the protests, the activism that Nassim talked about. And my husband and I were going to actually a Lego convention to record an episode of our podcast. So a very different event, but we had all of our recording equipment with us. And so we started recording audio of the event as we were walking around. And then Nassim saw us with our cameras out, and she gave us a flyer and we gave her a business card. And then she reached out to us and said, we want to start producing some content. And we were like, yes, let's do this. Let's work together. And we made some social media posts. We made the podcast. And so, that was the request. Nassim said, hey, can you help us do this? And then Nassim was hosting the event, the anniversary of Mahsa Jina Amini's killing. And she said, can you attend? And then she started I Will and said, can you volunteer? And so it was always just showing up and saying, what can I do? And not trying to dictate solutions. I try to not say this is what I think should happen. It's just waiting to be asked. I think that's one of the most important things. And Tara said in the podcast, she said, the Iranian women, the Middle Eastern women do not need the West. They do not need the West to save them. They need us to stop saving their killers. So a big part of this is getting out of the way and letting people take care of themselves. There is a massive misconception, in my opinion, that the West sees itself as superior and that we have all the answers and we need to go into places that there is problems and go fix their problems. And that is ahistoric, in my opinion. That is really flawed just on so many levels. So I think recognizing that we're all in this fight together. As I am fighting for Iranian women, I am helping American women. Not only because we have refugees here, but also because we're all one people. And we just need to start to see that fighting for freedom and democracy and the right to health and the right to love is a shared problem. And I don't, so yeah, that's the end of my thoughts. Reina, I don't know if you want to speak on this, but you talked about working with other organizations yourself up in Canada, and I don't know if you would like to share. I don't think we talked about that beforehand, but I'd be really interested to know more about your experience there.
Sure, I can share a little bit. So, um, the Since the Mahsa Amini movement, and I started working with different groups within Canada, not really on a huge scale, just a small volunteering basis. So the issue was that most of the issue we had was that the people were kind of like divided on different situations, and as Nassim said, there was a lot of like government, Iranian regime people around just to smear everybody's names. So within those organizations, we've had these issues as well. It was really difficult to just get the words out. And when we got the words out, there was like people around that would smear them. They would do a lot of like make it more challenging for us to just get everything out. So that was one of the things we had. But yeah, there are many different organizations that are working within Canada as well. Um, that we're doing a lot of work just to organize protests, so rallies. Like for example, Toronto had one of the biggest rallies, and the groups that work together, they work very well together. And then also there are different groups, but unfortunately, not everybody gets along with each other. That's the issue. I think it's not just Iranian community. I think it's a lot of different, like even if you talk to Ukrainian community, they have the same similar issues as well. So I think these was the challenges, but for the most part, I think we were successful to a point, and also just to get Canadian government um, designating the IRGC, which is the Iranian Revolutionary Guard, Islamic Republic Revolutionary Guard, which is the worst of the worst militaries in the world, get them designated as terrorists. So that worked a lot of, like, we had to do a lot of work. People had to do a lot of work, a lot of petitions, a lot of things. So I think just to having people listening to us Iranians and understanding, like non-Iranians, just to listen to us, to understand and not fall for the propaganda that is happening within the media community. So unfortunately, our belief system is that media has to be unbiased, has to be telling us the truth, what is exactly happening. But unfortunately, in 2025, it's not happening. That's not what's happening. Each news resources, they were giving us different information and different propaganda. Some of them were funded by the Islamic Republic. Some of them were funded by different organizations, like the Mujahideen Khalq, which is one of another group that were the reason why 1979 happened. But then they're Islamist and very extreme groups as well. So, or they were funded by NIAC, which is another group within US that does a lot of apologists again for the Islamic Republic. So unfortunately, the reality is that some of the medias are funded by wrong people. So they're not really giving us the truth. So it's really important for non-Iranians to attend the rallies, to attend our protests and stuff, and just listen to the Iranian people, what we actually experience and what I grew up to in Iran. I was 21 when I left Iran. So I was during 2009, I went back home, and that was the Green Movement. That was another movement that was happening during at that time. So I went on the streets, I was arrested. So like, it's just important, just that I lived that experience. As Nassim said, she lived that experience, right? So we lived that experience, and listening to us, listening to those women that were now they were political prisoners now out of Iran, and they're giving speeches. So these are very important, just to listen to them and understand. And that's huge. Believing them is huge help, right? So, and also a lot of help that non-Iranians can do is just if we have petitions, if we are asking for things to happen. For example, if we're asking to write to your MPs, or I mean members of parliament, or all of that, like in all around world, just to help us to do that, get the news out. I think that's huge help, just to make sure that everybody understands that Islamic Republic, we need to end it. There is no way that government can be restored in a different way. That's not happening. Everybody, if Iranians are divided, but they have one goal: Islamic Republic has to go. And that's, I think it's very important for non-Iranians to understand that.
Thank you. Well, as we, oh,
Oh,
I,
so sorry.
I
Go
think,
ahead.
go ahead, Reina.
yeah, I think
Nassim.
Nassim and Sagi both have statements for that too.
Great.
Yes, I know we need to wrap up. This is Nassim again. Um, just a few words. If you're listening to this podcast, if you're listening to Iranian women, you are part of the resistance. It is really as simple as that. The worst thing these governments, the authoritarian regimes are doing are making these women feel forgotten and that the world doesn't care about you. When you show that you are there for them and you listen to them and you care in any way, if it's liking a story, following those artists, any way, sharing this podcast episode, sharing those stories at a dinner table, then they are not forgotten. They exist through your words and their stories being told at those tables. And we are definitely not looking for any kind of heroic act and coming anybody to save us. But we do believe in collective action. We believe that change can come when people actually come together. A lot of those works that has happened that saved lives, like Toumaj, when going from life sentence, coming out of the solitary confinement, and being released was through huge amount of work that diaspora did. Letters written to, Congress. There were U.S. Congress members who actually signed letters in his support. We got them political sponsors, actually, people who are actively either in the government or mostly in the parliaments, actively writing to the Iranian embassies and asking for these people's release. So as Reina said, signing those petitions, being their voices, it's not it's common sense, and it's not you don't have to worry about bringing a change that maybe people didn't want. It's basic human rights, and lastly, remember, your power is so much that these people have invested so much that we are not heard. Two examples. To listen to Tumaj. He has a song about a mouse hole by a rat hole. And that's referring to people who need to be worried about the consequences of their action once freedom is restored. And one part of his song is about the apologies outside the Iran. So the guys inside Iran, they know these huge wrong narrative is out here. Hossein Ronaqi, who is actually now, as we were speaking, in jail, he actually sewn his lips in the past to protest against the regime. He actually made a list of people and organizations. He's inside Iran, but he's putting out the information about people that are people that you shouldn't be listening to. So don't listen to me, listen or Reina or others. You can find those activists even inside Iran to follow them. And we have tried to provide some of those resources on our website. So the great resources to go in, different activists that are there, you can follow them and listen to them. Plus the artist stories are there in their own voices.
Wonderful. Sagi, did you want to say something here too?
So what I want to add is lead with genuine curiosity. I would say a lot of times you might see someone Iranian around you, or you might see an Afghan woman, anyone from the Middle East. Everyone has a story, and you can just ask them about how was school. If they've been divorced, well, how did it go? And trust me, from the very genuine connection of them telling you, if they feel comfortable to share, and also like if you're close enough to ask them, I think a lot can be conveyed, and you can very much understand the state of the mind of the person at that time, and if it has changed or if they have some different perspective, etc. So I would say really by simply asking and being willing and patient to hear about what people talk about, I think you are going to learn a lot. And like every other situation around the world, there are people who have different points of view. But as you listen to them, you realize that, oh, but the methods of oppression are pretty similar. Or you are talking about the same problem, but you are thinking about different methods and different angles of processing it. So I think talking to people in contrast to listening to a pundit is the best possible way, because unfortunately something about the regime in Iran is that they have disconnected uh, all connections they had with any news agency. So I think it's only Reuters now that can go and take pictures inside Iran, and CNN had one single journalist recently going to Iran, and they very much celebrated it. At the same time, the journalist knew that she's not going to be able to see a lot, and what they saw was very much curated by the regime. So a lot of times you might see some journalists who might come and give you a story which is kind of in exchange of access to information inside Iran. So I would say just try to hear more voices that can give you a better idea of different points of view. Something that I really would love if people can do is to talk to others, like their circle of influence, people they know, about what you learned and heard. Like around the kitchen table, I don't need you to write a blog post about something that you're not comfortable sharing. But I think just a quick chat with your family members, loved ones, colleague, if you are comfortable, just telling them, hey, I've heard about this, and like these are the information I got. And that would, I think, raise enough curiosity in people, and also lead them towards making decisions for themselves, because I think we're seeing too many manifestations and not enough connections and conversation. And that kind of repels people. So I think just by simply talking, that would be helpful. And also, use the tools that are available to you. So a lot of times people might shut you down, like, yeah, check your privilege. But I would say use your privilege. If you have a situation, if you have a Twitter account and you see that, oh, it seems like a lot of Iranians are trying to trend something, especially when it comes to like death penalties, or if it's about a specific prisoner, in that situation, I would say yes, do write about it in Blue Sky on Twitter and Instagram, etc. Yes, please amplify that. At the same time, if there is a possibility to talk about your representatives, to include human rights issues when conversations come with Iran, that would be amazing, because for sure, EU, the US, UK, Australia, etc., they are going to speak with Iran, especially when it comes to the nuclear power. And so there is this constant back and forth of negotiations. And ultimately, they just want a deal that Iran would say, okay, we're not going to go and seek this kind of energy for bad purposes and whatever. I, I really wish if these countries would consider adding human rights issues to those conversations. And I want to add this, something that has really fundamentally changed after 2022 is that the people in Iran they're not looking for solutions to tolerate this regime. So that is something that very much changed compared to 2009. I was also in the streets. That's when I saw that, oh, they can very much kill people. That's where Nidara Sultan was shot dead in street. At, at that time, people were willing to see reform. And then their votes were stolen, and they were asking, where's my vote? I want my candidate back. Right now, that is not the issue. So, right now, I think I can firmly say that there is this consensus among people that this regime fundamentally is against the human rights, it's against women's rights. And there is no way to continue living under this regime and have the thought of human rights being held. Fundamentally, the way that this regime has been constructed and the way that it operates, it will negate human rights. It's either the Baha'is, it's either women. There is always someone being oppressed. And this regime has to go. And this is the message that we do hear from even prisoners inside Iran. There is Narges Mohammadi, who is the laureate, Nobel Prize laureate of 2023, if I'm correct. And she very much sent a message, a video online that she very firmly says this regime cannot be corrected or reformed. It has to go. And now the question is, how would this regime go without causing more damage and suffering and chaos in the region? So I would say if someone tells you that, oh, Iranian people are always protesting, that's not a cute protest. Like, people are fed up. It is over. At the same time, we want to keep the dignity and the right to live of people when it comes to the situation in Iran. So just be curious and keep asking. And yeah, let's stay hopeful.
Thank you all for those suggestions. And so my last question will be where we can find your work. Tell us where we can find you, maybe on social media or a website, so that listeners can get involved.
Absolutely. You can go to our website. It's I-will, I-will.org. We have a Twitter account. It's called IWillOrg. So no dashes, nothing. IWILLORG on Twitter. And we are also active on Instagram, and you can search for the handle Women for Life and Liberty. And you would see the logo is a woman with her hair colored with colors of fire. And I would be grateful if people could check us online, send us a message, subscribe to our newsletter. We would love to hear more about your thoughts and yeah, your feedback.
Well, thank you so much. Thank you, Sagi and Reina and Nassim and Kelly. Thank you for being here. Thank you for all the work you're doing. It's been such an honor to talk with you today.
Thank you, Amy.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Amy, and huge thanks to your audience who will listen to these stories. Some of them very hard to listen to, but they still will listen to us and will be there out for us. So thank you so much for giving us this opportunity.
Thank you.